Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Accelerate webinar series hosted by the University of Denver's Daniels College of Business Executive Education Program. I'm David Worley, Executive Director, and I'll be your host today. The Accelerate webinar series is designed to help you accelerate your capacity to deliver results for your organization. Today's webinar will be roughly 25 minutes. We will start with a brief presentation from our faculty, and then we'll move to questions and answers towards the end. We will attempt to answer as many questions as we can live, and if we don't get to yours, we will record answers to your question and include that in an email follow-up to you. At the bottom of your screen, you will find a Q&A icon. Feel free to submit a question whenever you see fit throughout the episode. For this 9th installment of our series, we are happy to welcome Joshua Ross. Joshua is a serial entrepreneur, having started multiple ventures, including a technology services company, an app for sports coaches, as well as working for established companies as a business developer and as an IT analyst. Joshua began teaching at DU in 2009, and in January, Daniels made the brilliant choice of hiring him as assistant professor of entrepreneurship. In his role, Joshua teaches some of DU's most popular courses, including several on new technologies, a nationally recognized course called The Fourth Industrial Revolution. And the interesting thing about that course is it culminates in the Madden Challenge, a sort of new technologies business pitch competition for DU students. Joshua is active with his family and an avid athlete and outdoorsman. It's our pleasure to have him on this webinar talking about cryptocurrencies and blockchain. Joshua, thanks for being with us. The webinar is all yours.
Excellent, thank you. I need to share, let me just share my screen. It's a pleasure to spend time with you today for a short discussion on blockchain and cryptocurrency. Most notably, we'll talk about Bitcoin in terms of the cryptocurrency. I teach blockchain, cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin in the Fourth Industrial Revolution course. And also I have a more in-depth 5-week course on this topic. So suffice it to say, today we are just going to scratch the surface. So what is cryptocurrency? Well, cryptocurrency is a virtual currency. We are all familiar with fiat currencies such as the dollar, the euro, the yen, that takes on either a physical or digital form. With cryptocurrency, there is no physical form. Nothing like what's depicted in this image. So there's no physical form. It's a medium of exchange, meaning that it can be exchanged for goods and services. It also uses cryptography to secure and verify each transaction. And this is what's very important. This is what provides the security with every transaction, what makes it nearly impossible to counterfeit or double spend, meaning spend the same coin twice. The cryptography is also used to control the creation of new units of certain cryptocurrency. Currently, there are about 3,000 cryptocurrencies available, but that number is growing each and every day. So some of the things that I want to make sure we all understand as we dive into cryptocurrency are some of the properties of it. First, it's decentralized. There is no central authority that validates each transaction. Normal financial transactions that we're used to take a third party or a central authority that authorizes and validates the transactions. Instead, what happens is it's a peer-to-peer network. It's a network of interconnected computers that talk to each other. For those of you who think back to digital music when it first started, think back to Napster. That was a peer-to-peer network. BitTorrent, another peer-to-peer network. Peer-to-peer networks talk to each other. They don't rely on a central server, central location, a central party to authorize the transactions. What happens is transactions are validated by the peer-to-peer network. And the validation and the authorization of every transaction is based on a set of rules. These rules are created by the creator of the cryptocurrency. Another really important thing to know is most cryptocurrencies are permissionless. Anyone can be involved. For example, with Bitcoin, anyone can mine Bitcoin, trade Bitcoin, purchase Bitcoin, become a node on the network. So after this discussion, if you want, you can go download your own copy of the Bitcoin ledger and become a node on the Bitcoin network. You do not need permission to join the Bitcoin network. Another important thing to understand about cryptocurrency is there's no intrinsic value. There's no actual value of the cryptocurrency. What there is there a belief that it will maintain its value in the future and it won't depreciate. It's also immutable. Transactions are immutable. And what that means is every transaction, once it's authorized, once it's written to the blockchain, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, that transaction can never be changed. It's immutable, meaning it cannot be changed. It also has a fixed supply. The supply of the Bitcoin is not determined by a central authority such as a central bank. So the supply is fixed for many currencies. And this is very important when I talk about Bitcoin specifically. The supply, how many can be created, is determined by the creator of the cryptocurrency. Each cryptocurrency has a different number of currency available. Bitcoin, the most popular, the most well-known, is capped at 21 million Bitcoin. That's the total number that will ever be in circulation. Currently, there's around 18,400,000. So you can see we're getting close to that cap of 21 million. And the final thing that I want to talk about is every transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain can be viewed. There's transparency. Think about that. Every transaction between two entities you can view. You can view the two entities that were part of the transaction. Their true identities are actually not visible, but the transactions from first transaction up until right now are all visible. So anyone can create cryptocurrency. There's a cost of about $135,000 that goes into the technology, the hosting, legal fees, government regulation, but you can create your own cryptocurrency if you want. So in order to see the price of cryptocurrency, to see the volume per day of cryptocurrency, there's a number of websites that you can find out all of this information. You can see every cryptocurrency that's currently being traded. There are also a number of websites that you can go out and buy cryptocurrency. You can go out and sell cryptocurrency. The most popular and user-friendly of that is a website called Coinbase. I equate it to something like American Online for the internet. If you think back to American Online, what it did was it was an easy on-ramp to get onto the internet. Coinbase does the same thing. It makes it very easy to buy, sell, and store your cryptocurrency. But at some point, if you start to buy cryptocurrency, store cryptocurrency, you'll need a wallet. You'll need a wallet to store and control your cryptocurrency. There are hardware wallets available, there are software wallets, there's something called cold storage, and there are paper wallets available. The type that you choose is generally based on how you plan to use the cryptocurrency, and everybody has different use cases for it. Do you trade it? Do you hold it? Do you use it to buy goods and services? That'll dictate the type of wallet that you choose to buy. Okay, so how did it start? Why did it start? What was the problem it was solving? We're going to focus on Bitcoin, the first cryptocurrency. So Satoshi Nakamoto, it's a pseudonym used for the creator of Bitcoin. It is unknown if Satoshi is a person, an entity, or a group. But Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin. October 31st, 2008, it published a white paper to a cryptography mailing list outlining the creation of Bitcoin and the creation of a virtual currency. Satoshi was very involved in the early years creating the adoption of Bitcoin, building the community, making sure the software was working correctly, making sure he was bringing on the right developers. But once it started to become popular and really getting liftoff in terms of support and adoption, and felt that it was in control, Satoshi left in 2010, disappeared. What's interesting about that is in the very early years, Satoshi mined a lot of the early blocks, and every block Satoshi mined would get 50 Bitcoin. So Satoshi has a number of Bitcoin associated with his address. And I won't get into addresses today, but my point is the Bitcoin that Satoshi mined is worth about $1 billion right now, but it's never been touched. Remember what I said earlier, you can look at every transaction on the Bitcoin ledger. It's never been touched. So Satoshi left, but never took the Bitcoin. So what was the reason? What was the reason Satoshi created Bitcoin? It was because Satoshi no longer believed in the current financial system. Look at the date, 2008. Satoshi felt the central banks continued to breach the trust of the people in the United States and around the world. This belief was a result of the actions of the financial institutions that led to the financial crisis in 2008. Think about that. It coincided with the first 50 Bitcoin created in 2009. What Satoshi believed was the creation of Bitcoin separated money from the state or the government. It removed control from the central bank in terms of printing money. It can't be debased. If there's a fixed number of Bitcoin available, you can't print more than is allowed, so it will not lose value. And there's transparency in every transaction. That's what Satoshi tried to solve. So the way Satoshi was able to solve this was through the blockchain. Bitcoin made the blockchain famous. So in order for Bitcoin to be successful, Satoshi needed to figure out a way to transfer Bitcoin from one party to another party without trust and without the need for a third party. Without the need for a third party to verify the transaction, record the transaction, secure the transaction. This traditional process when transferring anything of value, such as a stock, bonds, cash, real estate, the way we're used to it is using a trusted third party. A trusted third party to validate. So how do you build a trustless system without a third party? This was what blockchain solved. So many of you have probably heard the term blockchain thrown about in many different ways. I equate it to how people have used the cloud for many years, all very similar but different definitions. But in simple terms, think of the blockchain as a distributed database or a distributed ledger that contains every transaction for that specific blockchain. So every transaction that happens is written to this ledger, but it's distributed. So every node, every computer, think back to what we were talking about peer-to-peer on the blockchain, contains a copy of the ledger. Every node makes sure their ledger of all the transactions that have happened is synchronized with all the other ledgers. So they all are the exact same ledger on the blockchain. All transactions on the blockchain must be verified by a majority of the nodes on the blockchain before the transaction is accepted. Blockchains have different rules around what constitute transaction being authorized, but most is majority. 51% have to say that's an authorized transaction. Once that transaction is accepted, it is added to the most current block on the blockchain. Each block contains thousands of transactions, and that varies based on the type of blockchain. But once the block reaches the maximum number of transactions it can hold, it is added to the blockchain. And all of those transactions in the blockchain are basically locked. Remember what I said, they're immutable. They can't be changed. The next block is open and the process repeats. Trust me, I realize it's a very quick overview of blockchain. But what I want you to understand is blockchain is very significant and why this matters to you. Gartner believes blockchain will deliver $3.1 trillion in value by 2030. $3.1 trillion in value in less than 10 years from today. So when you think about with the internet and the impact the internet had, it changed the way we accessed information. Magazines, newspapers, the nightly news became obsolete. Traditional travel services were no longer needed. Email removed the need for the postal service. This is a few very simple examples of the impact the internet had. And these services had to change or become obsolete. Now think about it in terms of blockchain. As an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, if you're somebody out there in the job market or just want to improve your skill set, I would look at blockchain and really try to understand the impact that it's going to have. Not just the $3.1 trillion that Gartner talks about, but think about this. With decentralization, transparency, and trust that blockchain provides, what we're doing is the democratization of data. We're removing gatekeepers. We're removing bottlenecks. The control of information and restriction on access to information is removed. Transactions are faster and they're less expensive. These are the impacts. Think about up on the screen, the third parties, the clearinghouses, central authorities, the gatekeepers, potentially gone. So I'll leave you with this final thought. What I have up on the screen is a short list of industries, and by no means all of these areas that blockchain has the potential to disrupt. There's many more that blockchain has the potential both to disrupt and disintermediate. Today, we focused on cryptocurrency, which will be very impactful in financial services. But blockchain has many more use cases and reach. And when you think about it, it allows the transfer of anything of value from one entity to another entity without a third party. And when you think about it in that context, think about the opportunities, think about the disruption, think about the change in workflow processes that is going to happen.
Joshua, thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for that good presentation. I appreciate the insightful sort of commentary on the technology behind things. And we've got several questions that have come in from participants. But before we get to that, I want to ask you a quick one around if you're working in financial services today, and you are just becoming aware of cryptocurrency and blockchain, what do you think the starting point is for people to dive in and understand the relevance to their business? What would be the first thing you would recommend they do in order to understand more about blockchain and cryptocurrency?
That's a great question. I would read. I would read, and I would do research, but I would take a broad approach to it in terms of understanding what it is, how it works, and understand the regulations and roadblocks around it. And there's a lot of great books, and I would be happy after this podcast to put a lot of the different thought leaders I listen to from podcasts that I follow on Twitter, and a number of the authors that I've read both in books and on different articles.
Wonderful. That's great. In fact, for viewers, if you signed up for this webinar, you're going to get a follow-up email from the Exec Ed office, and I will do a Q&A with Joshua for any question we don't get to live, and we will add that into our question, and you can give that to us verbally there, Joshua. So Stephanie Greenberg asks, do already established vendors have to pay a large fee to be on a blockchain network? And is it worth the expense to vendors to provide a cryptocurrency option for their businesses? What's your assessment of that?
Wow, that's a big question, and I appreciate that question. So when I talked about earlier, I talked about permissionless blockchains that anybody could join as a node. You could do it right after this discussion. There is also a number of permission blockchains that are a lot of large consulting companies, a lot of the large tech companies are creating. And those you actually have to ask to become a part of. And there's probably a financial cost to doing that as well. But generally you would do that if there's an opportunity and you want to be part of that supply chain of some sort. So that's the one opportunity. In terms of offering a cryptocurrency, that that could be an opportunity depending on what type of business that you're in. But you really have to be clear about what you're trying to do, and also be very clear about the security regulations around it, and make sure that you understand the difference between the different types of tokens that are out there, and are you a security token, what type of token you want to be, and what type of cryptocurrency you want to offer. And I know I'm not offering a specific, because there's just so many routes you can take.
Wonderful, thanks. An anonymous question came in. Why have other cryptocurrencies appeared, and what do they add that, what do they add over Bitcoin?
Great question. Most cryptocurrencies are thought of as projects, and they have a certain focus on what they're going to do. So for example, one that is probably, if you take a step down in terms of popularity, is Ethereum. And Ethereum, the whole idea is around smart contracts and allowing contracts to be written and executed without any real human intervention. Ethereum, they also call it ETH or gas, is used to pay for the smart contracts and also pay for people on the Ethereum blockchain to write the code and write the contracts. So if you go onto a cryptocurrency trading site and you click into one of the different cryptos, you can read about what their focus is and what their project is. But they range from what I just talked about to cross-border transactions, or without faster transactions. There's a lot of different reasons for these cryptocurrencies.
So I would flag in that answer for the audience that back to the entrepreneurial nature of that you were touching on, if there are financial challenges that an industry is facing, cryptocurrency might be a route to alleviate some of those challenges, is what I'm hearing you say. As we think about, yeah.
Absolutely. And the one that I think is one of the most exciting is, think about the fact that if you want to send money from one country to another country, and the cost associated with it, the time that it takes, the friction around it, it removes some of these cryptocurrencies. That's what their project is. That's what their focus is. And they remove all of that. And transactions that would take maybe 3 to 5 days take maybe 5 to 10 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful for anyone that has ever waited on a bank transfer. So I just want to flag for the audience, we've got some really good, sophisticated questions popping in here, and we're going to get to these in the after show, basically in the longer form interview that I will do with Joshua. But we'll close off with one final question. We're going to switch over and talk about blockchain here. How can we use the conceptual idea of blockchain in the education industry? Atio Ray Chowdhury asks this question. Are there any existing applications that you see of blockchain in education?
That's a great question. At the current moment, I don't know of any, but I would assume, in terms of the number of areas where blockchain is being utilized, that there are some very smart people working on projects around education. Kind of a simple thing that you could do is, if you think about it in terms of your own personal identity, from the moment that you attend kindergarten or even preschool, and then you leave and you graduate from each form, where does all that information stored? Mm-hmm. And if you want to go access that information, it's very distributed, right? And you may not have a clear and concise place to find it all. Or think about the times you've had to apply to maybe graduate school, and you had to go back and find your transcripts somewhere, and you had to pay for them again. Mm-hmm. Well, with blockchain, if every time you complete something, and let's say there's an education blockchain, your information gets stored to the blockchain. And as you matriculate through your education, every certificate, every achievement is stored on the blockchain. So then I decided that I'm going to the University of Denver and the executive education, and
Yay.
they want to see what I've done to make sure that I qualify. I could simply just share out my my information on the blockchain, and it's all in a clear and concise order for you to view.
Wonderful. There's a bunch more questions about blockchain sitting here that we're going to get to. But in order to stick with our original plan and to try to stay on time here, I'm going to go ahead and formally close this down. But I will say to the audience, look for the email follow-up, and we will ask every question that has been submitted to Joshua, so you will get an answer. And so Joshua, thank you so much for being with us. It was a pleasure to have you. And just thanks for your preparation and for your clarity of the technology behind crypto and blockchain.
David, it was my pleasure. I had a blast. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. So to the audience, thanks for being with us. If you like this webinar, please join us next Thursday, June 25th, when we will host an interview with Alvin McBurrow, engaging the timely question of the new decentralized workforce. You can find all these dates, register, and see past webinars on our webpage. To do that, just simply Google the Accelerate webinar series at the Daniels College of Business. And once again, thank you for joining us today. We hope you gain new insight that will accelerate your impact in your community, your organization, and the world. From the University of Denver, Daniels College of Business Executive Education Program, we look forward to seeing you again on the Accelerate webinar series. Take care.